So this is great. I was just watching video of Illinois Governor JB Pritzker calling for the 25th Amendment to be invoked against Donald Trump. And he talked about how he's unhinged. He is probably suffering from dementia. He's getting worse, and he's a threat to the country. And so I'm going to play you just a small portion of what Governor Pritzker said. But then I really need to make some important points about this, because there's something that people really need to understand about the 25th Amendment. Anyway, watch this.
Note, the President of the United States is not sending troops into Republican cities or into Republican states. He's talked about it, but that's not what he's doing. He is focused on Democrats, and now he's made an enemies list. He's made a list of people that are his political opponents, and he's calling us domestic enemies. I mean, what kind of a country are we in here? The United States used to be a country where the president followed the Constitution, where the president believed in the rule of law, where the president didn't target people based on their views, but rather had debate with people and maybe won, maybe lost in an election, and put their views forward and got them passed. But the idea that you're going to go suggest that you're going to arrest people, or that people don't deserve to be U.S. citizens when they are, just because they oppose the President of the United States. I mean, there is something genuinely wrong with this man, and the 25th Amendment ought to be invoked.
Okay, so I absolutely love to hear Governor Pritzker calling this man out and imploring people to do something about this. That this is not right, this is un-American, and this man should not be president. And he's talking about taking action to strip him of his power. And I absolutely support that. More people should be calling for this. I mean, the number of impeachable offenses and outright crimes that he has committed just since taking office in January, the fact that not everyone is talking about how do we remove this guy from office it's an illustration of how screwed up this country is, because we would not have tolerated virtually any of this from any other president. Anyway, but there's something that I really need to address about the 25th Amendment. Because can we all agree, let's agree on something real quick. What really should happen to Donald Trump is that he should be impeached and removed from office. We can agree on that, right? That is what should happen to him. Now, people aren't talking about that because we've tried it twice, it didn't work. But just because we've tried it twice and it's failed doesn't mean it couldn't work a third time. But we've been down that road, didn't work. People understand how difficult it is to impeach and remove a president, and obviously impeachment alone in the House is not enough. You also have to get that conviction vote in the Senate, where you need 2/3 of the senators to vote to convict him. And we understand that it's, given the fact that this is a Republican-controlled Congress, it seems like an impossibility. So people are talking about, well, what else can we do? And while I don't see anyone really calling for his impeachment and removal, I see people bringing up the 25th Amendment a lot. And I'm not opposed to that. I'm certainly not opposed to people talking about how do we get rid of this guy? How do we remove this man from office? So I'm all for that. Here's the problem. Impeachment is really the only way to get him out of office. And that's what I want to talk about. Because the truth is, most people who talk about the 25th Amendment don't actually know anything about it, and obviously haven't even taken the time to read it. I'm not saying that's the case with JB Pritzker. So this is not a put down of him in any way. I think he's fantastic. But I just want to talk seriously about this for a minute. The truth of the matter is, using the 25th Amendment is harder than impeaching and removing a president from office through the impeachment process. Not only is it harder, it's like way harder. I mean, it is so much more difficult to strip a president of his authority via the 25th Amendment than it would be to remove him from office through the impeachment process. So let me explain how. Now, the purpose of the 25th Amendment is not to remove a president from office. Okay, that's what the impeachment process is for. People think it's another way to remove him from office. No. Even if you invoke successfully the 25th Amendment against a president, that does not remove him from office. He is still the president. The purpose of the 25th Amendment is to deal with situations in which a president is temporarily incapacitated in some way such that he can't discharge his duties. It could be any number of things. He could get hit by a bus and he's laid up in the hospital, a heart attack, something like that. It's been invoked in the past voluntarily by presidents who were undergoing surgery. And so while they were in surgery and recovering from surgery, they invoked the 25th Amendment to temporarily give the powers of the presidency to the vice president. So it's not meant as a permanent solution, and it does not remove the president from office. All it does is temporarily allow the vice president to exercise the powers of the presidency until whatever the situation that prevented the president from exercising his authority, until that situation has resolved itself. The vice president is acting president, not president. The president is still president. He is just temporarily stripped of his powers. Not only that, the process for invoking the 25th Amendment is so much more difficult than the process for impeaching and removing a president from office if it's done against the president's will. So let's go through real quickly here the 25th Amendment so you understand what I'm talking about. So Section 3 says is where a president can voluntarily, temporarily give up the powers of the presidency. So he can invoke it himself by submitting a letter to Congress saying, hey, there's this situation. I need to temporarily transfer the powers of my office to the vice president, who will now be acting president. Not president, just simply acting president. Okay, so that is the section under which presidents have invoked it voluntarily themselves in the past. Now, you can also do it against a president's will. And if we're going to invoke the 25th Amendment against Trump, it would be against his will, right? So we would proceed under Section 4. Now, in order to do that, the vice president and a majority of the cabinet would have to send a letter to Congress saying, hey, the president, for whatever reason, is not able to discharge the office of the presidency, and therefore I, as vice president, are assuming control and will be acting president until this situation is resolved. All right? Now, well, what happens if the president doesn't go along with that? Well, the president can send a letter to Congress saying, no, I'm fine. I am not turning my power over to the vice president. I am still fine and I will act as president. So what happens then? Well, in that case, Congress has to decide the issue. And in order for Congress to side with the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to temporarily strip the president of his authority, you would need a 2/3 vote of both houses of Congress to temporarily strip the president of his authority. Now, that is so much more difficult than impeaching and removing a president from office. What do you need for impeachment? Well, to impeach a president in the House, all you need is a simple majority vote. And then to remove him, you need 2/3 of the Senate. 2/3 is what you need for the 25th Amendment. 2/3 is what you need in both houses of Congress. So that's way more difficult. On top of that, on top of needing both the House and the Senate to vote 2/3 majority to strip the president of his authority, you also need the vice president and a majority of the cabinet. So to strip Donald Trump of his authority under the 25th Amendment would be so much more difficult than to just impeach and remove him from office. And then on top of that, remember, even if you successfully invoke it, it's still just temporary. So the president would still, Trump would still be president, J.D. Vance would just be acting president, and then you'd have a situation where even if Congress voted to temporarily strip him of his authority, Trump would be there the whole time sending new letters saying, I'm fine now, and we could theoretically continually have votes in both houses of Congress as to whether or not the incapacity or whatever the situation necessitating the invocation of the 25th Amendment, whether or not that still exists and whether he should continue to be stripped of his authority. Meantime, so what would happen then? You would have Donald Trump all over the place, threatening people, doing all kinds of stuff to get Congress to give him his power back. It would be an absolute disaster. Where if you just impeach him and remove him from office, that's it. Done deal, end of story. There's nothing he can do. You can't reverse it. And as difficult as removing a president through the impeachment process is, it is so much less difficult. I don't want to say easy because it sure as hell isn't easy. It's so much less difficult than temporarily stripping him of his authority via the 25th Amendment. So the reason I'm saying all this is because I've seen this from the beginning of this second term. People just have given up on the idea of impeachment for, obvious reasons, as we've discussed. But they still want to look for other ways to get rid of them, so they go to the 25th Amendment. But it's clear that no one even knows what the 25th Amendment says. It's not difficult. Now, I'm a constitutional law attorney, as many of you know, so I know this stuff inside and out. But you don't need to be a constitutional law attorney to understand the 25th Amendment. It's not that difficult. I highly encourage you to read it yourself, and you will see how ridiculous it is for us to even be talking about using the 25th Amendment. The truth of the matter is, there's only one way to get rid of him, and that's to impeach and remove him from office. That is the way that the Constitution sets up to get rid of a president who is a criminal, who is corrupt, who is violating the law and violating the Constitution. It's the impeachment process. The 25th Amendment was not written for that purpose. It's not to remove a president. It's a temporary solution to a problem, a temporary problem. But if the situation to deal with the president requires a permanent solution like this one screams out for, impeachment is the only way. And people need to, I've been saying this for a while, people need to come to terms with that. It doesn't do us any good to talk about all these other things that aren't going to happen and are even more difficult than the impeachment process. If we're serious about getting rid of this man, there's only one way to do it. We need to pressure Congress to impeach and remove him from office. Now, obviously, with this Congress, that's a difficult task. I'm not going to say impossible because I don't believe it is impossible. I think it's impossible right now, but politics is not static. Things change all the time. And I've said this over and over again, and this is true now, and it will always be true. The way you get Congress to impeach and remove Trump from office is to make members of Congress more afraid of us than they are of him. Right now, they are far more afraid of him than they are of the people. If we flip that around and we make members of Congress more afraid of the people than they are of Donald Trump, then they will vote to not only impeach him and remove him from office. Congress is where we need to be putting the pressure. If we really want to get rid of this guy, if you think it's just completely a waste of time, well, then it's all a waste of time. And we need to figure out how we win at the ballot box and hope that we can get rid of this guy in 2028. But if we are serious about removing him from office, as I believe we should not tolerate this. And God only knows what this country's going to look like 3 years from now, about 3.5 years from now, at the end of his term, assuming we can even get him out of there. What's this country going to look like by then? No, I think impeachment and removal, if any president in American history deserved to be impeached and removed from office, it's this guy. That's what we should be talking about. And while I absolutely applaud Governor Pritzker for bringing this up, talking about how this man is utterly unfit to be president, which is absolutely true, I just wish more people would start talking seriously about using the only constitutional method that exists to remove him, really remove him from office, and that's the impeachment process. And I just want people to understand what a waste of time it is to really talk about the 25th Amendment, because it doesn't remove him, and it's infinitely harder than impeaching and removing him that way. So let's focus our efforts on things that are what we should be focusing our efforts on, okay? The 25th Amendment ain't gonna happen. And that's not what we would want anyway. We wanna get rid of this guy, okay? We don't want a constant battle for the next 3.5 years about whether he's fit or not, whether he has dementia or not, and have this guy running around still as president. He'd still be flying around on Air Force One. He'd still be able to do all the things he's currently doing. It's not like even if we invoke the 25th Amendment, that we put him in a straitjacket and stick him in a rubber room, which, I'd be all for that. But that's not going to happen. He's still going to be president. He's still going to be all over TV. He's still going to be flying around on Air Force One. He's going to be doing all of that. He just wouldn't be exercising the powers of the president. JD Vance would. And actually, that's probably way worse, to have Donald Trump still the president, just doing whatever, while JD Vance is actually exercising the, I don't know, that sounds like a friggin' nightmare to me. Not that having JD Vance as president, period, wouldn't be a nightmare. It would be, but one piece of shit scumbag president at a time. Let's try to get rid of this one first, and then we can figure out how we deal with JD Vance. But anyway, I think I've gone on enough here. Oh, I almost stepped on a snake over here. He's right in there. I don't know if you can see him, but he's right there. He's a big guy. Looks to be about a 3+ footer. Anyway, back to recording. We'll leave him alone. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.